It looks like that must be most of the waiting room. I will just stall for another minute here. My name's Emily with the Green Burial Council. We have been working on the materials for tonight's program for quite some time, and it's an exciting thing to be able to offer you guys. So our presenters tonight are going to be Rachel Essig and Jeff Hodes, and both of them are my fellow board members on the Green Burial Council. We've already done a sound check, so if you can hear me, you ought to be able to and see the green discussing the value of pre-planning slide, then you ought to already have everything you need for tonight's program. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our hosts.
Thanks, Emily. Give me a minute here. I'm sorry about this. Okay. Can people see my screen?
Not yet.
Sorry about that.
No,
I got a new I got a new MacBook, and this is the first time I've had to like share.
Yeah, we only did a sound check. That was on me. Yeah, the permissions maybe.
Yeah, I've got a
Let me also say, as a housekeeping thing, we're going to have plenty of time for questions on this. So if during the presentation you think of something, go ahead and put it in the chat. We'll be sure to circle back to that at the end.
oh, this is unfortunate. Oh, wait a minute, somebody. Yeah, Ryan, let me email you the link. It wants me to go into all these system preferences and stuff. So it's gonna,
That'd be great if we could, one
yeah,
of the others of us could share the slides.
yeah, I'm gonna email it to Ryan. A lesson learned on our end. Well, while we're waiting for Ryan to pull that up, let me introduce myself. My name is Rachel Essig. I'm the board treasurer of the Green Burial Council. I'm also a cemeterian. I've spent 16 years in the cemetery and funeral business. Um, I started out working for a municipality. I was working in a metropolitan government district that has parks and natural areas, and who purchases land for habitat protection. And a part of that department, they had 14 historic cemeteries. And unexpectedly, I was asked to start managing these properties. And so that's how I entered cemetery world. They were very difficult properties for me to manage, and for the agency that I worked for to manage. And I kind of got a name for myself. I got recruited out by one of the big funeral and cemetery companies in the US. And I managed a combination funeral home and cemetery here in Portland, Oregon for them. And then I got recruited by Riverview Cemetery here in Portland, which is another historic cemetery, but it's a private nonprofit. And at Riverview, that's where I really cut my teeth on green burial. They had already been doing green burial since 2009. They had been certified by the Green Burial Council, and green burial at Riverview represented 1/3 of their business. And prior to my departure, I was working on a large project to install a dedicated natural burial ground within the cemetery. Riverview is a hybrid conventional burial, natural burial cemetery with a certified funeral home on site. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to hand it over to Jeff to talk a bit about himself.
Hi, okay, I'm Jeff Hodes. I've been in the cemetery funeral industry for just a little over 42 years now. I've been in private, corporate, religious, and other. I've been involved with the Green Burial Council now for just a little over 15 years, and I'm going to use the word off and on. I got involved in the Joe Seehey days. When he left from us for Australia, I moved and went into another area and have been back and involved with the Green Burial Council again for the last 6 years. I am working right now. I have worked over those years with 12, 13 green or natural cemeteries from startup to active. I still have a couple that are in the works right now. And when I say I'm part owner of one in Pittsburgh, little part, but still very, very, very active in that cemetery. So, and always asking questions or answering questions for people that think that they're crazy enough to start a cemetery and helping them understand where all the problems are in that. So I think pretty much that's me in a nutshell. Been in the work with the funerals. I guess the only other thing is I've done everything on a cemetery other than the backhoe, and I tried that once, and we just say that we have other things that we do better than that. So that's pretty much the story on that end. Really, really excited about presenting this pre-planning guide. I can remember back that 15 years ago when I started with the GBC, this was an objective to put something like this together. So we finally got it done. And I want to say that as long as I've been in the cemetery and funeral industry, we've been using a planning guide to help families understand why pre-planning is in their best interest. It's the key to helping families realize what's in it for them. Whether it was Dale Carnegie, Steve Covey, Zig Ziglar, whoever may have said it first, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Too many times we as death care professionals start talking about natural burial with prospects doing a brain dump of supposed facts, forgetting that the most important information we should be sharing are the answers to their questions and concerns that they may have, not how much we know. If a natural funeral home or cemetery wants to remain relevant and understanding why families should pre-plan, the question needs to be answered, and this record guide helps us get there. There is no way that we as a natural funeral home or a natural cemetery can really stay viable in our communities if we don't, as well as if we are depending entirely on at-need services. Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, so I'm going to add on to that a little bit as Ryan advances the slides for us. So many funeral homes and cemeteries use guides very similar to what we've been going through on these slides in front of you. It's a preview of the actual book. And so we've developed this guide that it'll be available for purchase for specifically for our certified providers to use. And so typically funeral pre-planning presentations and guides are very similar out there. Some of the big corporations have their own. I know ICCFA used to sell guides. NFDA provides them to their members. And so this is just a very similar guide. And what Jeff and I are going to go through is very similar to how others in the industry present. And as you can see, we've got the goals of the session. So we're going to kick it off now that we've gone through the guide. We're going to be going through the importance of pre-planning funeral and cemetery arrangements and how to use the Green Burial Planning Guide in your community. And as you can see, the goals of the sessions today will be that participants will learn the importance of their clients filling out the pre-planning guide, establishing the value of the guide to your clients, and how to present the guide to your funeral or cemetery clients and the positive impacts it'll have on your business. I always think of these guides as a gift to your clients.
It's a little different. You train people how to use it, and now we're training the trainers. So if my thinking goes back and forth, please forgive me and try to sort of extrapolate from that. But what I've found when using one of these record guides is how important it is to ask questions and involve whether it's the family, although I also know you can use these guides in groups, but the real essence of it, if you don't get involvement, as I said before, if you don't get their input, a family's input or a group's input as you're doing it, my feeling is it's going to fall flat. And part of the way you get that involvement is you ask questions. One statistic that we talk about, back up, okay.
Can you back up?
Yeah, not really done there. Is we talk about the fact that everybody at least 3 times in their life has to deal with a death. So one of the places that we start when we're working with a guide, again, to establish that value, is we ask them, have you ever had to deal with a death? How did you feel in that situation? And you ask questions about what did you learn from that? I mean, the interesting part there is when somebody says either they had planned it and it was taken care of and how good they felt that that was all done. And then you'll equally find people that have had no pre-planning done. And what that does, again, is helps you develop that guide, that helps develop the value in that guide, sorry. And it gets the focus from the guide and it gets the focus back to the family. Go ahead.
All right, yeah, so let's talk about when arrangements have not been discussed prior to death. What we see when making arrangements with our clients are indecision, worry, sticker shock, and potential family conflicts. Like that's like the worst thing that we could come across. So by presenting this guide to your clients, you'll show that you're a trusted partner to them. You're a trusted partner in the community, and you'll help them prepare to make a plan for their final arrangements. And by doing this, it'll help your client's family in the future to avoid conflict, worry, indecision, and sticker shock. And you'll see some wording up on each of these slides. These are good talking points for all of you, and we can make the presentation available after we're done today. All right, Jeff. Oh, no, I'm next. Sorry. All right, so here's some good talking points I just mentioned to have a conversation with a client. The first step in pre-planning is having an open discussion and with the client about what their thoughts are on final arrangements. So Ryan, if you click, little questions will come up. So something to say is we hope that you'll learn the importance of planning before the time of need. that it's more about relieving the burden on the ones you love than it is about death? How do you want to be remembered? What's important to you in your final arrangements? Do you know what your spouse would like? And actually, this is a big thing. A lot of people don't know what their spouses want to do. So this kind of opens the conversation with them. And have you ever discussed pre-planning? People don't like to talk about their death. And this is a good opener just to start the conversation with them. Okay, we're on to the next slide now.
Just picking up a little bit before I start this on what Rachel was saying. When you're bringing new people on as part of your team, and even when you're making some of these an at-need or a pre-need presentation, it's always interesting. I tell people that death brings out the very, very best in groups and families, and the contrary. And you just need to be ready for both. And it occurs too when you're having these conversations like Rachel was talking about, and getting people involved. And you know, if you talk to your spouse about what they want, or your significant other, I think all those things are important. And what this guide does, like I said before, and you're going to hear me say it quite a bit, is that it really, really helps getting those questions going, and it helps you in getting to know the family that you're serving by asking those questions, getting the response, and then affirmation. Wouldn't it be good if that was in writing, and then put a smile on your face? Anyway, the guide. Anyway, back to my part of the presentation here. What you'll see with any of these guides is that they are divided into emotionally driven or emotional decisions and financial decisions. We talk about pre-planning as being this guide is essence to help you start to pre-plan. And when we talk about that, we're also talking about the peace of mind that you get when you have a guide completed, or even if it's not completed, even if it's partially completed, even if you're working on it and having those discussions, but there is a certain, wow, that's done, or we've started to do that. You're doing it together. And as Rachel said, you're finding out what the other person wants, what they don't want, how they feel about funerals and death in general. And again, we get to put it down. It also helps as far as the financial. We talk so many times in any kind of funeral and cemetery operational discussions about comments that we see in the news about the high cost of dying. I can almost guarantee you that people that have pre-planned, even if they haven't decided to prepay, people that have pre-planned, that discussion about, oh my gosh, the costs, when they know what it is that they want, and they have an idea what it's going to cost them, that again goes back to the peace of mind. Now they can take care of that. They can financially, they can freeze the price. Obviously, pre-planning and prepaying is today's dollars versus the dollars of some unknown point in the future. And it's certainly more acceptable than in an at-need situation. As you all know, it's cash and it's confusion. And it's always, and I'm probably jumping ahead, but there's always that moment when you're with a family and there is a pause. Sometimes it's verbal, sometimes it's not. And you know what that family or that spouse or that individual is thinking. Is this what she or he would have wanted? And I think as you walk through this guide, that's part of the most important things that you get across, in that you find out what they want, you get some idea what it's going to cost, and you get the peace of mind of having that behind you. Now, there's many more things in front of you, but just behind you. Okay, Rachel, sorry I got off on a roll on that one.
That's okay.
And again, I'm going back to what I already said because I jumped ahead a minute, and that is when there's a death, as you all know, because you have dealt with or are dealing with it, it's a very, very difficult day. And there are a lot of decisions that have to be made. How much easier if you have those things in writing. And it's our job as the funeral or cemetery professional to guide those people. But you've all heard this too, about the feeling that a family gets about, in quotes, and I hate using the word, but I'm going to do it anyway, pressure. Well, what we're trying to do as the guides is to guide them through this day or these days. And sometimes when that's just nothing but indecision, sometimes it gets to, it may feel like it. When you've pre-planned, you've completed a guide, you've done it beforehand, whether you fund it or not, those pressure moments, it's a different kind of pressure when you lose a loved one, but some of those other decision-making pressures are lessened. And I think that's another point that we make as we walk through the guide, and we talk about what it may or could be like, or what we've witnessed as we tell our stories. And that will help that family understand why the value and benefit of the guide. Sorry, thank you.
So here's some other talking points that you can use. What if something happened to you yesterday? Who would be responsible for your arrangements today? Would they be able to answer this question? What would they have wanted? And I think that some of us that have made those at-need arrangements, we've listened to our clients say that. I don't know what they would have wanted. And they worry, they're wringing their hands.
Getting affirmation as you go through the questions. Again, you've heard me, I've already said it, it's about developing the value. We've talked about whether a family has ever had to make arrangements before for another family member. And now what we're doing is circling that back around to say, what arrangements have you taken for yourself? You know, have you done anything, and have you put anything in writing? Have you talked about it? And then have you put anything in writing? What have you done? And so the questions that we ask as we're working into the guide itself is making sure people understand that there is value in completing the guide, or at least getting it started. I tell people, you know, the very worst thing that could happen is for a family member to come back and find this guide that we have given you and find it empty, or empty with only your business card in it. It has virtually no value at all. And then I tell the equal story about a guide that's completed and how a family felt. And I tell a third story about and adding value to the guide by telling them of a friend of mine that lost a child. And obviously the husband and wife were so very, very distraught about the loss of their son. Then they had completed their own guide and pretty much said, well, if this is good enough for you and I, it's certainly good enough for Bill. So they use that guide to help them go through that grief. So again, we're talking about all the different points that you need to do, and where the value is in completing, starting, talking about it, and then a smile on my face, knowing where to find it. But that's another discussion a little bit later on. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is a talking point that you could use to transition into reviewing the guide with a client. You know, saying something like, if it makes sense to prepare for things that might happen, doesn't it make even better sense to plan for something that will happen? You can also say something like, we have auto insurance. You can go back. We have auto insurance, health insurance, homeowners insurance for something that might happen. So let's talk about planning ahead for something that will happen. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to review the guide with the customer. So you can say, let's review the planning guide and how we can help you in recording your wishes. Another thing you can say is recording your wishes and options will ensure your loved ones feel secure in knowing what they did and what they would have wanted.
Now I get to talk about the guide itself. I think it's one thing to think about as you're doing any sort of a pre-need presentation. There are 4 points. There are 4 points, and the guide is really designed around this. The important points are, first, why pre-plan? So we're helping a family understand why pre-planning is important. Why natural burial? What's the value and benefit of natural burial? We talk about why XYZ, our funeral home or our cemetery, and why that's important. And then we talk about why now. Why should we be doing this pre-planning now? And again, whether we decide to prepay or not, another whole question, but why now? And so as we look through the different pieces of this guide, you'll see that it's really designed around that, and it's designed around the engagement and the storytelling. What we're looking at, this is really the second and third pages. The first page on that says about this guide. What that is it tells what's important about it. The same thing that you're listening to Rachel and I talk about here for 30 minutes is what it is. Sometimes it may get put aside. Some people, depending on how you decide to use it, may pick one up and not fill it out, or maybe they decide later, I forgot about doing this and let's get started. The point about this guide is it doesn't add nearly the value that you would add in a presentation, but it does talk a little bit about why you should do it. The other side, what is green or natural burial, talks a little bit about what the features are in a natural or green funeral home and what it is in a natural or green cemetery. Not all natural funeral homes and cemeteries are all equal. Shades of green aren't always the same. So we tried to keep it as general, shall we say, as possible, but still give people enough information to understand what they're doing and what this guide is all about. Okay. This is actually the first page. And what this is, it's a loving message to our families. To somebody that's picking up this guide, what this message is, it tells somebody that we made these decisions together. And we really hope that you abide by our decisions and the direction that we're giving you. And sometimes we read this message to a family member, families, and we're presenting it. When it's a group situation, it's a little harder to do. If it's a one-on-one or one-on-two situation, we really try to stress the fact that this is an expression of our love to you, that you follow through with what our wishes are going to be. Okay.
So checklist. So this to me is the best part of the guide. It demonstrates how many things there are to do when a loved one dies. And then number 2, people like checklists to stay on track. And by going over this checklist, you are demonstrating to the family the value of pre-planning. They're seeing all the stuff that they have to think about when a loved one dies. And that's when you start getting an aha moment when you're talking to your client family. They're looking at all of this and like, oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't realize that this could potentially be something I have to do or or my loved ones need to make a decision on. And it's right there and they can check it off as they're going. Next slide. All right.
Go ahead. And we say with that checklist that Rachel just pointed out, that if you complete this guide, more than half the points on that checklist are complete.
That's true.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about the guide. Back. Okay. I'm going to start at the top, what the document and will locator, and move on through it from here. I'm a storyteller. So I've got stories for nearly every line in this book, and we're not going to go there, I promise you. But certainly when there is a death, finding where's this, where's that. I remember my father talking about his honorable discharge papers from the Army. And I can't tell you how many times he told me where those were. And when he died, I knew exactly. But other things like marriage licenses and insurance policies, social security cards, where are they and where can they be found? So much stress is taken away if you can find those things. A little bit easier. On the other side, life insurance policies, and there's stories at different points. Oh, I'm sorry. One other thing at the bottom of this document list is that you can't see that's cut off, but you'll see it in the final version that you'll get is a will locator, a will location of where your will may be. That's so important. If any of you have ever gone and through probate, certainly they want an original will, not a copy. And so knowing where that is important. Life insurance policies. I think my favorite story on the life insurance policies has to do with beneficiaries. And let's just say a person was on their second spouse, but had forgotten to change the beneficiary on their original life insurance policy to the second spouse. Didn't play well, going back to my best and worst in a death situation. It's a good reminder. Also, you find people that have insurance policies through their work, and maybe a family member doesn't know that. So having these things on here, as much information as you feel comfortable putting on it, on the bottom of that page on life insurance and investments are 2 QR codes, so that a person can get the most updated Social Security benefit information, and as important, as much information about the VA and what a veteran benefits may be. My life recording. I don't know how many of you have ever been involved in writing an obituary for a loved one. Another one of those interesting family moments. And as Rachel was talking earlier about conversations and who knows what about somebody else, a spouse knowing, do you remember what my mother's maiden name was? Always a great question. Things like that are answered here. They're taken care of. Employment information, previous information, what kind of information you may have had. Veterans information is here. And again, below that on that page are also things what I want to be remembered for. I mean, we all have those off the wall. Maybe we don't all. Some of us do have those off the wall things that we want to be remembered for. And this is a good place to put that down. I'm not going to know. We're not going to go down that story, but suffice it to say, so many things can be put on this page that are going to be so helpful to those people left behind, whether they get recorded or not. Again, you've got a different family moment that this record's going to help you with. On the other side of the page, my green burial wishes. What do you want to have done? What funeral home, what cemetery have you selected? How do you want your body prepared? Are you going to be interested in cremation? Some cemeteries allow wedding rings on or off, but I know that certainly is frequently has been a discussion in funeral homes, what they want to do there, types of containers. And I think what's important too, again, that's at the bottom of this page, is what you want your funeral service to look like. For me, what hymns, what Bible verse would I want read. Other people have different feelings about what they'd like to have said or read at their funeral service. I think there's a lot of involvement, a lot of discussion points that this guide helps both the living and certainly helps you, I don't know what better way to put it, be assured of what, how you want to be remembered, period of end of sentence. That's good. But there's room on this for that kind of information to be shared. Okay.
Thanks, Jeff. So just as much as what Jeff spoke to, there is pages for the spouse to fill out, and it's basically the same fill in the blank as the other pages, but it's specific for the spouse. So a couple could be doing it together, or you could just have an individual fill this out, and it's just the individual's record, and you would leave the spouse area blank. But if you're with a couple that are married or in a partnership together, they certainly can fill out the guide together, and it's just a repeat of the same information. I have to say though, on the life record part, and some of these areas that are getting filled out, it also becomes a gift to the funeral director, because he or she are able to look at this guide and start pulling information out of it that they're going to need to file the death certificate. And that's less burdensome on the family that's already been spun out. They can say, hey, can I take a look at the guide? And they can just start filling out their forms with some of the information that's already been preloaded in it. Next slide.
Family registry. I find value in this and the stories that I tell, and it probably has even more value today than maybe it did before. Now that we've got cell phones or smartphones that have addresses in them that are locked by all sorts of different things. When there's a death, there are people around that really want to help. And what I found value in this family registry is, as a spouse or even as a child, I don't want to have to be explaining over and over and over again what happened to my mother, my father, other loved ones, and how nice it is to be able to hand this family registry to someone and say, could you call these people and let them know that Bill died, and talk with them and tell them a little bit about when the service is and things like that. I think that this relatives and friends guide really does help you divide some of that work. Some of those things can be done. Some cemeteries and funeral homes make copies of this page and stick that in so that people can put more names and phone numbers. Or, hey, oops, I started this and I remembered I still have 3 or 4 more aunts that I wanted to put on there. Great, we'll give them a guide. We'll give them a copy. It's also a great piece for you because, again, it gives you some sort of an advance, as Rachel just said about other family members. When you give this guide to the funeral home, they really begin to know what sort of family is going to be involved with their service. Okay. And finally, that guide and others, it's asking for referrals. You know, that I talked from the very beginning about being involved with the guide, asking questions. I think one of your final, and the questions you've asked all throughout this is, Mrs. Jones, or Mr. Jones, do you find value in this guide? And hopefully we're getting affirmative answers. And if from a group, we're getting affirmative answers. As we're getting those affirmative answers, we get to the end. We've talked about what the person needs to do. And so the next question is going to be, are you and your husband, or you and your spouse going to fill out this guide? And hopefully that person is going to say yes. And we let them know that we'll be of any help that we possibly can. But we also ask for permission to give this guide to somebody else, to a loved one. And who would you like us to deliver this guide to? You know, relative, brother, sister, cousin, friend from church, friend from a Rotary Club, wherever that may be. We want to be able to deliver this because it is, as I said from the beginning, it's our lifeblood. In order for us to stay relevant in the community, we can't be just an at-need cemetery or an at-need funeral home. We need to be involved, and this guide helps us with that involvement. Referrals are what, again, it's going to help us keep the lights on. Okay.
Yeah, and following up on that, you know, sometimes we'll get a situation where a spouse died and there were no plans made, right? And after that, we're still connecting with the surviving spouse. And this is a good opportunity to talk to the surviving spouse about pre-planning. So maybe their children or their relatives know what that widow or widower wanted, right? So these are some talking points you can use where you know, you saw what just happened, and you know we're pre-planning you now, but who close to you do you think was also affected by the death of your loved one? You know, do you think this person would want this guide as well? Because they're trusting you. You've taken care of their loved one. You're helping them with their pre-arrangements and filling out their guide for the future. But, you know, perhaps, let's say the decedent was David. Perhaps David's had siblings, and perhaps David's siblings haven't pre-planned. So you're asking that widow or widower, you know, who else do you know could find value in this guide? And so here's some talking points about that. And those people, they've already been exposed to you, whether in the funeral home or at the cemetery when they attended the service. So they already saw the good care that you gave. And then this just builds upon it, as a way of showcasing that you do care about your community, you care about your client families, because that's what this is ultimately what this is doing. This guide is protecting your client families, and it's protecting your client families' connections, you know, other family members or friends. I've often seen where someone will say, "Hey, you know, I just talked to my cousin Jean, and I let her know that she really could use this guide. And could you give Jean a call and go over this guide with her?" And people will come to you and ask you to work with their friends and family to fill out the guide. And here's some talking points, like I said. We're kind of wrapping it up here. So we're on to the next slide. All right, so to recap what we've covered, using this guide in your business will help build your reputation as a provider in your community. It helps build value in pre-arranging, and it ultimately relieves the burden on your client's family. So Green Burial Council providers may purchase these guides from us by contacting Krista at our info@greenburialcouncil.org email. And a pack of 25 of these are $48.75 plus tax and shipping, and a pack of 50 is $87.50 plus tax and shipping. Also, I want to say if you do get guides from us, and you have questions, you can reach out to Jeff and I. You can even reach out to Emily, or the Green Burial Council in general, and we can help answer questions you might have beyond this webinar. And on the next slide, we've got our emails up. Feel free to jot them down, and we can open it up for questions now.
Hi, my name is Taylor. I'm tuning in from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Thank you for hosting this workshop. I posted a question in the chat. I was wondering, how do you gauge the appropriate moment to engage with other family members and friends about pre-planning? This wouldn't necessarily happen right after someone has died, right? I'm just trying to figure out when to do this.
Right.
I can,
Go ahead, Jeff.
and Taylor, first of all, Taylor, I'm going to give you the corporate answer, and then we can go from there, okay?
Okay.
You know, when we're training people, or family service people, or we're training our staff, we talk about 3 to 5 days. We talk about it at the interment conference when the family comes in to sign the interment order and make their at-need arrangements. We talk to them at that point about setting up an aftercare appointment 3 to 5 days after the service.
Okay.
Okay. We feel that the sooner that you can talk with somebody, that's the wrong bad. That part of the training talks about the fact that the sooner you can talk to somebody after a death, I'm going to use the word easier. I'm not sure that necessarily is fair, Taylor, so forgive, but
Mhm.
I use it when I'm training and I talk about the fact that the closer you are, the more mortal you are. The further away you get away from a death, the more life starts catching up to you. The more you're
Right.
going back to work, your kids, your family, and other things, so that some of the importance of getting those things taken care of lessens. Now, I will have to say that there are some equally that say 7 days. I think the important thing to do is at the interment conference when you're meeting with a family to sign interment orders to make the at-need arrangements. You can talk to them at that particular point about at some point about the fact that you have this record guide and you'd like to meet with them sometime as soon as possible after the service. What would be a good day? And you try to press it, I think, for my opinion, and it's not everybody's, but I think the sooner is better than later.
Mhm.
Rachel?
Yeah, to build upon that, I mean, I've seen people, so, all right, you're in the arrangement conference and the surviving spouse is there and you know that they haven't pre-planned. You're letting them know, hey, after this, there's a lot of decisions going on in the next few days. I would like to follow up with you to go over a guide with you about pre-planning. And 9 times out of 10, that surviving spouse will match what their spouse had done or what they had done for their spouse. But with that surviving spouse, you're planting the seed um, in the arrangement room with them. And you're going to check in with them anyhow. I'm hoping people are checking in with their clients a few days after the service to see how they're doing. And then in terms of like other people that attended, I've seen a graveside conclude and a family service person go back to the office and people come in and want to talk to that family service person about pre-planning. So it really depends. Some people are motivated on their own, and then other people, they'll tell you, like, you follow up with them in 3 to 5 days. They'll say, you know what, this week isn't good, but at least you have their contact information and you say, that's fine. I understand now is not a good time. Could I reach back out to you in February?
Okay.
And then you just put it in a little calendar reminder to reach, because you said you were going to reach out to them in February, reach out to them in February. I've seen it where family service people make that promise and have not called. And as a manager of a location, received complaints. Sally Sue said that they were going to call me back about my pre-arrangements in February, and it's March and I haven't heard from them.
Mhm.
You don't want that to happen.
Right.
Not good for your business. Nope.
No.
And in your answers, you were saying after the service has been fulfilled, are you talking about the arrangement conference or the
Day
actual?
of the
Funeral,
day
the
of the
funeral
burial.
and graveside. Mhm.
You said the funeral.
The day of the burial or funeral.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Looking in the chat, clarify your position on whether or not to prepay. It's always good because once they pay, they're done and then they don't have to worry about it anymore. But in terms of, let's say, again, it's a spouse that unexpectedly passed away and that widow or widower just shelled out a significant amount of money. We call that unfunded. So you're filling out the guide with them, but they're not necessarily paying because they don't have the cash right now. And you're letting them know that, again, you're going to follow up with them when things settle down financially for them. So, I filled out this guide with my mother, and my mother chose not to fund her pre-arrangement. So she has a copy of the guide. I have a copy of her guide, and the funeral home has a copy of her guide. And I'm figuring out, who knows how we're gonna how we're gonna, my brother and I are probably gonna wind up paying for it, but at least everything's written down, and that's the important part. So it's really up to each family and how you work with them.
And I think another consideration with that too, just to piggyback on what Rachel had said, you know, when we talk about pre-planning, many cemeteries and many funeral homes offer payment plans. Not all, but many do. So besides just using, when I was talking about the fact using today's money versus something in the future and freezing the cost, you can again, depending on the cemetery and the funeral home and how that funeral home may be taking care of a pre-need, but you can spread those payments out over number of months, some 3, some 6, some 12, some longer. Again, depending on how you want to set that up. But there are ways that, again, lessen that payment process on a pre-need that you don't have on an at-need.
It looks like Holly has her hand up. Is Holly still on?
Yep, there she
Okay,
is.
yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
I am thinking more along lines of when this came up, it was more about the how to talk to your community. I I do have several people in my end of life care that I'm comfortable talking to with the individual families because I've had that kind of relationship with them, but I'm actually trying to extend my uh thoughts about pre-planning into the larger community of where I live. And so I guess I'm looking for a little bit of like how do you go about um bringing in a larger community, the literally the larger community of my small town, and engaging them with the thoughts about pre-planning, not just individually, because I'm pretty comfortable with talking to my individual families at this point, but I guess I'm um, looking for a little bit of I don't know, confidence or something to um, bring a larger community in to the discussion about pre-planning.
Mhm,
And so if you have any thoughts on how to
mhm.
engage that, because that's I think I thought about like hosting at the library,
Yeah.
death there's the death cafes, there's do I just go for it and say actually have an idea about um um a flower, and this could be you, everybody's doing it, kind of
Yeah.
the nuances of how you engage people, but um I guess I'm looking for a little bit of ideas about how to forge forward in the larger community. Like
Right.
I have a very small community, but I also want to have, I can imagine like a gathering of people that let's talk about this, you know. Um, and so can you give
Yeah.
any light on that or
Yeah. Well, so if you're just doing the guide and you're not, I'm not sure if you're talking about selling a funeral plan or a cemetery plan or just presenting the guide to the community, because those are two different things. If you're
Mhm.
just presenting, um, and I'll dial back. If you are thinking that you would want to sell a funeral plan or a cemetery plan, that you need to check with your state because many states have licensing requirements for those future pre-purchase sales. So you would like I'm in Oregon and that's a life insurance license. So you become a life insurance producer. Some pre-plans you can write and trust, but it all differs from state to state. If you're not going to do that, and then you would need to find, if you were going to sell it, you would need to find somebody to write for, like an insurance company. Um,
Mhm.
but if you're not going to do that and you're just going to present, Um, like I said, we're going to be sending out this presentation. You could tailor it for a group and make your own PowerPoint. Take because we're talking to quote unquote death care providers in this space. But if you're just talking to the general public, you can tailor and use those talking points with them, and the beginning slides were actual screenshots of the pages in the guide. And you could do that and just use, meetup, Facebook events, things like that to
Mhm.
post your Death Cafe or your talk. And, tell people to bring snacks and water and
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
have
Food is always the big common denominator. So I'll provide snacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just the confidence about um, facilitating a gathering of people that are interested in such a thing. Um, that's what I, yeah, am hopeful
Oh,
to do, to
just again,
bring it
on
in
top
a
of what
bigger
Rachel,
awareness. I'm in Arizona, so in southern Arizona, so and it's on the table, and there's a lot of options here, but I just feel like um obviously people aren't thinking about it, and so yeah, I just want to I just want to bring it to their awareness a little more, and so having a meeting maybe at the library or our little community center or whatever. Does that make sense, or does
yep,
that
I
feel
think
like
all those
the
are
right
great.
thing?
I think all those are great ideas. I think once you get a copy of the guide and you go through it, and then you can figure out questions. A lot of cemeteries and funeral homes do an entire presentation using just the guide instead of a lot of lead-in information. There are some that you can, by the time you start telling stories about it, you really get that involvement. There really is enough information right there that you can have a very good discussion with people about why pre-plan.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'll just get really brave and put the idea out there on the billboard of the on the cork board of the post office, and who wants to talk about this,
Yep,
right? Right? I mean,
great
yeah.
idea.
Okay.
it's an awesome
Okay.
idea.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Hmm.
Do we have any other questions? I'm glad to
Hi,
see.
Emily.
I'm just reading the comments. Yeah, I don't have anything else unless you all do. It was
No,
great seeing all your faces.
thank you also very, very much for listening in. Appreciate the GBC sponsoring this.
That's been great. Thank you, guys.
I had a quick question actually. I'm sorry. Did you guys go over pricing? I know that kind of varies depending on the person, but is this like a free service that you
So
would?
yeah, that's a good, so when you're giving these out for free,
Okay.
I wouldn't be charging these people for the guide. It's a gift.
Mm-hmm.
More like thank you for your business.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because ultimately it's gonna result in business for your establishment.
Okay.
So it's a couple dollars per guide is how it works out.
And
Okay.
I've seen places that do it both ways, where the only way to get one is to have an appointment to discuss it. Or I've also seen places that lay them out, that, encourage you to take one because of the benefits we've been talking about. But for kind of like an between charging for it and giving them away a lot for free is
Mhm.
kind of putting it behind a gate of, well, an appointment to discuss it.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's typically how I've seen it
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah,
You
I
really do
was
want
just
to discuss
curious.
it so it doesn't get thrown, my opinion again, thrown aside, people don't have magazine racks anymore, but if they did, you'd be found in there and nothing ever done, and go back to that example of the empty guide with only a business card in it. It really does need some guidance to get it started, to establish that value. As beautiful as it is, I don't think it establishes that much value on its own.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would need to walk, at least start it out with them
Yeah,
and talk to them.
Thank you.
Welcome. All right.
Well, you guys have been awesome, and the recording will be available on our website of this meeting. Give us a week or so, and that link will be up. So if anyone needs to go back to it, we really appreciate this resource you've now created.
Yeah, and thank you for your patience with our little technical difficulties.
We won't hold it against you, Rachel. It's all right. It's good.
It happens. It
I
really
know what
does.
I'm gonna do after this. I'm gonna hook
Survive.
up Zoom to my operating system.
Some practice. All right. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Nice evening.
Have a good
Bye.
night.
Bye-bye.